Hi, welcome to the introduction to the third paper of Ethereal Mechanics, electrogravity. Electrogravity is going to demonstrate a unification of electromagnetism and gravity. It's going to demonstrate what gravitational fields are, how they are generated by matter, and how they couple to matter. Along with this will be a model of matter that is the origin of all field phenomena and properties of matter. The purpose of ethereal mechanics is to develop fast and light starships to bring humans to other worlds, or at the very least to find out if fast and light starships are indeed a possibility. Because ultimately, the Earth needs to be unburdened because population is just going to get too large. I know there's people out there that say, oh, well, we'll just develop new technologies which will increase food production. Yeah, but the Earth is only so big and only so much sunlight falls on any given area of the Earth. So eventually there's going to be an upper limit of humanity that can be sustained by the Earth. And in all due respect to Mr. Elon Musk, the job of bringing significant number of people to the stars is not going to be done with 600-year-old Chinese fireworks technology. The simple reason being is that the Earth does not contain enough fuel to make this happen. And look at all the pollution this would generate anyway. What ethereal mechanics says, and this is so far, you'll see this in the paper Electrogravity, is that every cubic meter of empty space contains trillions of dollars worth of energy in the form of ether. Okay, the objective is to figure out how to tap into that fuel and how to manipulate the ether to produce starship propulsion. So where is science? Well, we've had an impasse for over 100 years. We have Maxwell's equations, which is 1870-something. We have quantum mechanics, which is like 1920s, and relativity, which is like 1905, 1916. And the interesting impasse is that quantum mechanics is allegedly a model of matter, but it doesn't explain gravity. So you got a model of matter here, but with no gravitational field. And then you've got relativity, which is a model of gravity, but they don't have a model of matter. Now think about that. If matter creates gravity and matter reacts to gravity, how can you not have a model of gravity? That's a serious impasse. And these guys don't talk to each other, and they don't really talk among the three of them very well. Okay, and this is the model, Newton's model of matter from 1700s. Because this constant G here, this is the big giveaway right here, that this is an empirical model where they measured two things. They measured the force, and they had to come up with the constant G to correlate the measured masses to the forces between them. If you've got a big old honking constant of relation, it means you have no understanding of the underlying mechanism. And again, this all was developed by the Cavendish experiment from 1798. Yes, before the Constitution of the United States was even signed. This is when the constant G was measured. And this over here is Einstein's gravity equation. And notice, it's got the big old, same old honking 220-year-old constant of relation, which says to me that relativity is no more than lipstick on a pig. In ethereal mechanics, we're going to derive G from the model of matter. We're going to show you how the ethereal mechanics model of matter can be used to show where the constant G arises. This is from the paper right now. All these constants are well known except the radius of a preton, which is right here. If you punch all the numbers in, you're going to get the proper value of G. And this constant G is completely of electromagnetic origin. I'll say that again. It's completely of electromagnetic origin from electromagnetic constants. Okay, so there is prior art review. I've done a video. Here's the link to the video. I will put the video. It's T13 is the video sequence number. And this is the review of prior art. And I review everybody from quantum mechanics to Tesla to Ken Wheeler to Dollard, a whole bunch of them that had something at least somewhat of a following or somewhat meaningful. But be careful because there's a lot of people out there that just love to go crazy with unnecessary complexity. Like the quantum mechanics folks will always say, quantum mechanics is more more strange than can possibly be imagined. I'm sorry. If that's the case, quantum mechanics is not a candidate for a theory of everything. Because in the rules of acquisition, I forgot exactly which number, but the derivation is if something is going to be a theory of everything, it has to be ridiculously simple. Okay, and there's another guy out there which I complain about. Instead of saying something simple, he's got to say simplex. He's got to make things complicated and say everything's simple, but he makes everything complicated. And instead of saying, a cherry has a color, he'll say, Prunus avium has a luminous reflective modality, which doesn't tell me anything. If everything has a color, then obviously cherry is going to have a color. And so he speaks in such general terms and says, prove me wrong. If you speak in general terms, you know what I'm saying. Now, on the other hand, if he said, Prunus avium has a luminous reflective modality with a power spectral density centered at 700 nanometers, well, now we're getting somewhere because now I have a measurable quantity, a quantity I can measure. Okay, and all we're saying here is that a cherry is red. Okay, so there's a lot of ways you can say things to make things sound more impressive than they really are. That's not what I'm about. Okay, this is completely unnecessary. All you need to do is tell me a cherry is red. Okay, so, and again, though, he doesn't even speak in this much detail because with this kind of stuff, I can build starships with. If you have a theory and all you do is speak in relative terms like this, I can't build a starship with things as general as this. But if you start giving me quantities I can measure and quantities I can go out and use to design things, well, now we can talk. I don't care how complicated you make it, even though it's unnecessary, but at least you're doing science here. You're giving me measurable quantities that I can put down on a blueprint to become part of a starship. When you just talk in general terms like this and say, prove me wrong, I'm like, yeah, okay, right. Why am I wasting my time? Okay, so who am I? My name's Robert Distinti. I'm a senior engineer at a company. I have a master's degree in electrical and computer engineering from Fairfield University, and my specialization is in electromagnetic physics. Okay, in 1997, I came up with a new model of induction because I was looking at electromagnetism. There's something wrong here, and I presented it to a physicist, and the physicist said, without even looking at my work, you'll never work in this field again. And I'm like, this is physics? Okay, in 2007, I used the new induction for my graduate thesis to compute the inductance of circuit board traces, and basically any shape. I mean, I could do full three-dimensional shapes, and circuit board traces sandwiched between 1 and 2 ground plane, and I got better results than anybody has ever gotten before. Okay, and if you want to see the foundation series that talks about how that was developed, I will put the link in the low bar. I've never told anybody what my day job is. My day job is I'm a radar engineer. I work with radar. Okay, I'm not going to tell you the company I work for because, first of all, I don't want all these butthurt physicists nagging my day job, trying to get me fired because I'm going to become a threat to them. And number two, my company has a reasonable policy that we're not allowed to use their name with our own personal work because they don't want to be used as an endorsement for people's private work. And I'm okay with that. I don't really need their endorsement anyway. If my theories are right, they will carry themselves of their own quality. I do not need to drop somebody's name, okay, if I'm right. Or maybe Mother Nature's name, because ultimately I have to agree with her. Okay, and people might say, well, you work with radar engineers. Well, how are they going to complain about that you don't believe Maxwell's equation's a load of garbage, which it is. Okay, but if you look in the radar handbook, you will not find Maxwell's equations or even any reference to Maxwell's equations. And in section 7.2, they use e to the j omega for modeling radiated waves, which I have no problem with whatsoever. Because e to the j omega has its kinetic energy component and its potential energy component are 90 degrees out of phase, which gives you a power that's pretty constant over the span of the traveling wave, which is awesome, which is consistent with ethereal mechanics. Maxwell's plane wave equation has the potential energy component and the kinetic energy component in phase, where if you end up, so at this point where both of them go to zero, the power of your wave goes to zero. So your traveling wave goes from maximum power to zero to maximum power to zero to maximum power. And I'm sorry, but this violates potential energy, or sorry, conservation of energy. And where are the physicists? Where are the physicists? This violates their own laws of physics. But nobody questions it. Because when they were students, they probably questioned it, but said, oh, if it was in the book, then somebody would, it was a problem, somebody would have said something by now. So they accepted it as fact instead of questioning it. And over 100 years ago, engineers switched to this. And this is interesting because in order to transfer your potential energy component to your kinetic energy component, you do that with a medium. With a medium. This e to the j omega is a solution to the Helmholtz equation. The Helmholtz equation is the wave equation for waves that travel on a medium. And those waves are waves on a string, waves in the water, waves in the air. And over 100 years ago, electrical engineers started using this with good success without realizing that they're violating Maxwell's equation, but they're getting the same good results using it for radio and radar. So somewhere the bait and switch occurred, and because they were getting the right answers, they just assumed they were compliant with Maxwell's equations when they are most certainly not. So I don't have a problem with what radar engineers are doing because it's consistent with ethereal mechanics. And ethereal mechanics says waves travel on a medium, that medium being the ether. Okay, so there is no disparaging between me and what I believe and what we do where I work, because we're using the same equations that I agree with. Okay. But I know that physicists will continue to fight every step of the way, because if I'm right, they're all going to be out of jobs, their degrees are going to be invalid, their credibility is going to be gone, funding for their projects will all but go away. Journals will be closed because who's going to keep submitting stuff to a quantum mechanics or a relativity journal when ethereal mechanics can explain everything without the problems that they had where they don't talk to each other? Okay, and being a Nobel laureate in physics is going to be a joke. So here's the big picture. 20 years ago, I found there was a problem with electromagnetism. I started with electromagnetism V1. Okay, and then that started telling me, I started seeing, gee, there could be a model of matter and gravity. And then, oh, and that looks like I can talk about black holes. And this bounding back and forth went on for 20 years. I kept filling in the pieces of the puzzle, just like with a painter's brush. If you keep going back and forth, you fill in all the little spots that the brush missed on the first pass. But it took 20 years to fill in this whole section here. And I'm down to this is the lowest level of the rabbit hole. It's an abstraction layer I call pretonics. So in this paper, electrogravity, we're going to cover pretonics all the way up to the boundaries of cosmology and new electromagnetism. Okay, just to show you that this pretonics is a good abstraction layer, because the holy grail of ethereal mechanics is ethonics. This is what the ether is, what it's made of, how it interacts with pretons. This is the stuff we need to know. These black holes here mean that there's a lot of missing pieces we don't have yet. And this pretonics right now, this is a simplified model, which has a lot of abstractions here right now, because we don't have all the picture here. But I'm going to show you with the abstractions that we have right now that we can explain everything very accurately, going all the way up through electromagnetism and cosmology. And then once I do that, then I'm validating this abstraction layer is correct, and then we're going to start going back and start filling in these holes. Because here's where we're going to learn how to tap into the energy of the ether. Here's where we're going to learn how to manipulate ether for fuel. This is the holy grail. This is about 5 years away. Because what's going to happen is we're going to be getting this paper out by the middle of this year. New electromagnetism is going to take till the end of 2022 to complete. Cosmology is going to probably take all of 2023. Okay, in that time, I'll be trying to fill this in as much as I can, so hopefully I can go right from this to this in one shot without having a delay, having to figure stuff out. So I'm going to try to fill this in while I'm completing all the papers and producing all the videos and papers for this over here. So this video series outline for electrogravity. It covers pretonics, a model of matter, and electrogravity. This is Ethereal Mechanics, paper number 3. This is the video number, and this is going to be the intro. That's this video now. The next video is going to be the foundation, where we're going to talk about a lot of foundational things we need to do to understand before then we can go into pretonics and show the one underlying field from which all the others are produced. Excuse me. And then the third video is going to be model of matter and showing how all the synthesis of all the fields occurs. the synthesis of all the properties of matter, and the synthesis of all the fundamental constants. We're going to show you epsilon, mu, g, all the ones that are covered under this thing. We're going to show you there is no need for arbitrary constants anymore. If you understand the underlying models of nature, you don't need these constants. I mean, you can use them, they're convenient, but at least now you know where they come from. Okay, now this paper may be broken into two parts because there's a lot of ground to cover here. Okay, so the prerequisites, and I'm going to put links to these. This is Ethereal Mechanics paper 1, which is transvariance. This covers a simulation of the Michelson-Morley experiment and shows you that physicists have missed a lot of translational variations needed to compensate the Michelson-Morley experiment. And in fact, I came up with a new one that I'm in the middle of producing right now. There's going to be an addendum to this. Ethereal Mechanics 02 talks about the constructs that we're going to use. We're going to be using natural units. Natural units. That's described in this paper. And then we need a new version of mathematics. We need vector algebra that has a complete multiply operator and a complete divide operator. Legacy vector calculus does not provide a complete multiply, and because it doesn't have a complete multiply, you can't do the inverse operation of divide. And then there's the rules of acquisition. The rules of acquisition are a way of thinking about science that will change the way you think about science so you can see past the things that are in front of you to see, aha, this has a particular feature, which means there's something more going on here and I need to investigate. There are tells that tell you that there's something more going on. There are tells that tell you this cannot possibly be right. There's a whole bunch of rules. There's 33 rules right now, and one of the other rules is what a theory of everything should look like. So we know what to look for, as opposed to this, grand unified theory. No, there's got to be, there's a lot of things you can deduce on what a theory of everything should look like, and that's in the rules of acquisition. We don't have a paper on this right now because the rules of acquisition are being finalized, a fourth generation. They've changed so much from the first, the second, the third, to the fourth generation that we never really had a paper of them. As a matter of fact, the first generation of the rules of acquisition were basically a tongue-in-cheek thing that was in the original video series. Okay, but after a while I realized, hey, these are powerful. And I started formalizing them. But then what changed from addition to addition is certain things, well, these are the same rule. I put them together, condensed them. Other things were like getting, like the 17th rule, the rule of ambiguity, the ambiguity tell. It just became too big to be put under one. And so that got broken up into multiple rules of acquisition. So we're going to have a final rules of acquisition hopefully out this year. The rules that we need will cover as we go. This is how you find all the papers and resources described in the video. If you go to the website, www.distinti.com. Now, this is a site still under construction. There's a lot of links that take you to wrong places and stuff, so please bear with this. This first link here is 500 See or Die. This is a long-term survival. This is one of the reasons why we're doing Ethereal Mechanics. And if you go to this link, you'll be taken to a YouTube video. This is the Ethereal Mechanics entry. If you click on the picture or the link, you will get in there. New electromagnetism will be replaced with new electromagnetism V5. So this is obsolete. This is the scientific rules of acquisition, and this is Vortex algebra. Vortex algebra, if you click here, you'll get to the access to the paper. In the paper, there's links to videos that show the simulation. There are the scientific rules of acquisition. Let's go in there for a second. There are presently two versions, version 3 and version 4. These bring you to YouTube playlists, which will cover them. We're going to eventually put them into column form down here when I get time, so you can pick and choose which one you want to watch. Okay, and then there's the review of competing theories. This isn't complete. This only has T11. It doesn't contain the T13 video yet. I've got to put that up. Hopefully, when everybody sees this, I'll have this page updated with the T13 video. Okay, but now let's go to the Ethereal Mechanics page. And the Ethereal Mechanics page is broken down into EM01, which is transvariance. This paper replaces special relativity. Use the link at the bottom for the PDF. Eventually, we'll link all the videos to this page. Here's EM02 constructs. This is the second paper of Ethereal Mechanics. There's a link to the PDF. And again, we'll have the videos, linked. This will be the spot where electrogravity will be placed when I update the website. Right now, it's the reason why this happened is because I had started electrogravity a number of years ago, and it got so big that I had to break it up into the static gravity model and the dynamic gravity model. But now that has been overcome by an improvement. So electrogravity is going to go here, and then we're going to have new electromagnetism V5, and then there'll be this EM05 is going to be cosmology, and then there'll be the light models, so these will be updated down here. And again, there's supporting links to this rules of acquisition, rules of competing theories, and Vortrix algebra. Okay, so that's essentially, and here's a link to the old new gravity paper, which is from 1999, which were back then I knew that matter had to consume ether. I didn't know why back then. And this is the older model where we use new electromagnetism version 3. And a lot of the stuff in the paper is using old language. Like we used to use the terms that physicists use, which was massless charged particle, which is an oxymoron, because if something is massless, it doesn't exist, because mass is a measure of quantity. So if something is massless, it doesn't exist. The proper term is inertialess charged particle, which we use now. And we didn't call them pretons back then. We called them massless charged particles, MCP. Okay, so what we call MCP in this, they're what we now call pretons. Okay, so there's probably some other lingo things, but don't worry, it's all going to be made obsolete by electrogravity. Okay, so this is the Ethereal Mechanics homepage. I think I've got every now. Again, this is under construction. Some of these links take you nowhere. Like if you click on this, it brings you just back to the top of this page. So make sure in certain pages, if the top link doesn't get you there, the bottom link should. Okay, I've got a lot of updating to do on this website. Anyway, thank you. I want to thank my Patreon subscribers. Your support has helped expand operations with new equipment and facility expansion. Please help if you can. Distinti.com is the website that we talked about. Our Patreon site is etherealmechanics.com. I don't think the etherealmechanics.com gets you there. It doesn't seem to get me there. So if you go to Patreon, Ethereal Mechanics, you'll get there. And then there's Ethereal Mechanics Info, which is a blog site run by one of my Patreon folks. So thank you all. Thank you very much.